Welcome to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Sade Curry, and I believe every divorced woman deserves a romantic relationship where she feels safe, loved, and cherished. You can create the most amazing life after divorce, and I will teach you how. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I have here on Zoom with me one of my clients, Melissa Cameron. And Melissa's here to tell you her dating after divorce story. Melissa is a relationship coach, which actually makes her story super interesting. She's a relationship coach. She works both with singles and couples on their relationships. Melissa, welcome to the podcast. Please introduce yourself.
Hey, everybody. So cool to be here. So cool. Yes. So my name's Melissa. I am too a relationship coach. I help men and women when they believe they are at the beginning of the end of their relationship. So I help my people get back to love or some sort of deep understanding about their thoughts going through the relationship. And then they get to make a decision about whether they stay or go.
Yeah.
So that's what I do.
Yeah, welcome. And I know I've heard little snippets of kind of like the work that you do, like when we've had client sessions and I ask, how's your day? And you would say, oh my God, there's this couple 2 weeks ago, they weren't even speaking to each other. And today they're so connected. So I have over the last 6 months really gotten a feel for your work, and you just have such a heart for love and connection. And it's interesting that with being just such that amazing person that you are, and I know everyone who's listening, if you ever check out Melissa's work, like she knows love and she knows connection, and it just shows, but then you had like trouble in your own relationships.
Yes, absolutely. So this has been quite a journey for you and I. Hey, Sade.
Yes, it has.
Yes, I have had, and probably, that nurturing, giving, connecting, loving, soft person that I am got me into a little bit of trouble over the last few years. Yeah, I definitely wasn't in the place that I wanted to be, prior to coming to work with you. I absolutely felt like I needed some help myself. As we all do.
Yeah.
Need some different eyes, a listening ear, and certainly a new perspective. And I was so ready for it.
Yes. And I mean, you jumped in and you did the work and got the results. So, but before we go there, like you've been divorced how long now?
So I've actually been divorced 12 years.
Right.
Yes. So I think I was 30. Yeah, I divorced at 30. At that time, I had my son was 3. And since then, but just before working with you, I'd been in 6 relationships in those 12 years. And they ranged from 6 months to 18 months. And I had a couple of 4-year relationships in that time.
Yeah. So what was going on there? Like, were they all kind of the same kind of guy? Like, what? I mean, 6 relationships is significant.
Yeah. I think, it's an interesting question. I had married, I'd met my husband when I was 20. So we were together 10 years, and he was actually 17 years older than me. So the dynamic of our relationship was very much, he was older and established and knew what he wanted, and was good at telling me what I should want. Mm-hmm. And I did a lot of my growing up in that time. I was still trying to figure out who I actually was. So by the time I got to 30, I was like, I actually don't want to be told what to do any longer. I sort of feel like I need to go out into the world and make some of my own mistakes and discover for myself life. So I jumped from this very sort of structured, we had everything established, we had a couple of properties, the business was doing well, and I jumped from that to being with boys for a while. I needed to be away from, that dad type figure. So I oscillated between being with boys who weren't yet established and were certainly not ready for commitment, to, back to men who were wanting to take care of me or were that stand-in, older male figure. And I just oscillated between the two for those 12 years, not really ever getting to the place where I felt like I was with someone who was my equal.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned that parent-child dynamic in relationships, because it's so common. It is so, so common. And a lot of times, if you look closely at the recent history, the husband-wife relationship there are elements of the parent-child relationship in there. Many times, we talk about the fact that women couldn't have their own credit cards or get a business loan like 50 years ago in the United States. So very much so in quote unquote recent history, women went into the marriage relationship as just a child to the husband.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that dynamic is somewhat subconsciously accepted.
Yeah. And I think actually part of me really wanted that, to be fair. When I entered into my relationship, I was 20. I was the, oldest of 4 children. I'd taken care of my siblings and some of them were quite a bit younger than me. And when my husband came along and took care of things, I very much welcomed it. I wanted that.
Yeah. And that's just a gap. It's a gap in maturity. Because that feeling of wanting to be cared for. Now, of course, we do want a relationship where someone does care for you, but it needs to be more of an equal, mutual care versus, oh, little one, here you are. I will care for you. Because that can quickly turn into control.
Yeah. And, that mutual reciprocity that we talked about so many times, you and I, the mutual love, care, admiration, that was such a huge learning for me. I just I didn't really feel like I'd got there where I'd been in something where it was mutual.
Yeah.
Whatever we were talking about.
Absolutely. So what made you think I need a coach?
Well, obviously in the coaching world, this is how your brain works, right? When you're surrounded by coaches as you're training. And I guess it was the success that my business had up until that point was definitely a factor in this, because I started to think, if I can be the CEO of my business and really work with my brain to get the results that I wanted for my clients and my business itself, and my life, going out and doing extra things that I love to do, why the heck could I not do this in the relationship field? It honestly dawned on me last year. It was like, I've done this in so many other areas of my life. I need a coach very specifically for this dating journey.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, 100%. I think one of the reasons why I try to collect people's stories and lay out a process is I want people to see that it's our brain, it's our thoughts. Like the act of downloading an app and getting on an app is I guess we would call it an action line. That's an action line. Anyone can do that, right? Yeah. But it's your thoughts and the emotions it creates and the energy that you have and your thinking that makes that action line succeed.
Yeah, I knew I needed to get back there. I mean, I have a really deep understanding that it was never about the action that I was taking. And in fact, I was taking the same actions because I was effectively getting the same results. So I knew I needed to go back to that foundation level and sort out what was going on in my brain. And I knew I couldn't do it myself because I kept trying and it wasn't working.
Yeah.
And so fortuitously, you and I met through our mastermind. And when I heard that you were specifically helping divorced women over 40 to date, I was like, it's a hell yes. There is no other woman for the job.
100%. And I am very clear about that age. I mean, I'll take a couple of people if you're like close to 40, but I'm like, no. It really is. It's different, like slightly different dynamic, with that age, even though you wouldn't think it would be, but it can be. So yeah. And I'm so glad you reached out. I was like really surprised, and I had seen you in the mastermind. And then when you reached out, because your name is fairly common, I didn't put two and two together that it was you until we got on the consult call. And I was like, wait.
I just really felt like you were calling me in, Sade. Like with that dialed in niche, I was like, there can be no other way.
100%. So when we started working together, I mean, we did the consult call. You were all in. It was really exciting. We connected. It was great. And you were all in for the work. And I think that has really made such a difference in your journey, because your success has really been an example. Like you were like, I'm going to do the work. And no matter how hard, whatever it is that I was telling you, you were always up for it. And so the first hard thing that you had to do was break up with someone.
Yeah, I did. So I want to touch on what you just talked about with regards to being the student. I have to admit, I do love being a student. So, I was all in from the beginning. I was like, whatever she says, I'm going to do. That's it. And we would coach on the Tuesday, my time, and I would listen again on the Wednesday. And then I was also in your group program on the Thursday. So I had you 3 mornings a week. There was no escaping the work. Yeah. And when I would listen back to the recordings, I would ask myself, was I really in the room for this session? And I would verbatim write notes and study them. So I really took it very, very seriously.
And the results show, like, just those of you listening, we're building up to her results. I don't want to give it away too early, but Melissa got some incredible results. And I think the fact that you were focused on the goal, you were like, this is my goal. I want to work through this. And you made the time and space and focus to really let your brain shift and change. That made all the difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. And I let some things go in the meantime so that I could really focus, for sure. And, I would leave your calls and ring my girlfriends and talk about my learnings. Like I was in it. I was in to win. And yes, to your second point, I was actually in the process of coming to terms with the end of a somewhat interesting relationship when we first met. We had been conversing online or over Zoom for about 18 months. So he was living in Australia, and I think we had just met. He'd come over for a 5-day period, and, we were very close, but I knew immediately that he wasn't my person. And I was still working through all of the thoughts and feelings about this man being an incredible person. And how did I reconcile that with him not being my person? Because I believed that him being a wonderful person was enough.
Right. And you didn't want to hurt him.
No.
You felt like he had invested in the relationship and you'd invested in the relationship, and you were trying to care for his feelings at the same time.
Yeah, he was so loving and so committed and so available. And, he had a relationship with my son. I found that end very, very difficult. Yeah. And I think we met around that time, didn't we?
Yeah, but why did you have trouble? Why did you need to break up with him? So, because, anyone listening says, well, if this is a nice guy who has a relationship with your kid and he's good to you, like, those guys you can find those guys every day. Why would you say no to a really nice guy?
Well, that is the $1 million question, really, isn't it?
Well, you knew for sure he wasn't your person. What was it about him that made him not your person?
So It's so interesting because I'm just monitoring my brain as you ask me this question. And I'm like,
your brain is like, well, he was great.
yeah, how did I know what made him not my person? It wasn't an inspiring relationship for me. We'd had a project together very on in our relationship, which made it super fun and engaging. And at that point, we had that mutual reciprocity. We were both bringing something to the table. And then the project ended and the relationship was flat after that. And I felt like I was bringing energy and growth, and I was super excited about what I was doing in my business, and all of these things were growing and moving, and he wasn't. Like the spark or the energy of our relationship had gone when the project had gone.
And so that's really fascinating because it's interesting. It's an interesting question to ask. What sparked the relationship? Was it him, or was it because you were in this expansive container doing expansive things?
Well, this is exactly it.
Right. And like you've seen me coach, I will ask my clients very uncomfortable questions like, but why? And then why? And it's like, well, no one's ever asked me, like, I'm not attracted to him. Why? It's like, I don't know. I'm just not attracted. I'm like, well, you have to know. Like, this is part of adulting. This is part of dating.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable when you ask us this. Because he's such a nice guy.
Right. And it's interesting. One of the things that I teach is like, we do this having a vision for where you're going. So when you're choosing someone, you chose him because of where you were at the time. But at that moment, you hadn't thought about where you were going to be in 5 years or 10 years. And the minute you started thinking about that, he no longer fit into the picture.
That is exactly right. I could not see beyond that project. I could not envisage our life together in the future. And every time I questioned it or even spoke to him about it, he would be like, oh no, I'll be the guy. I'll be your support guy. Whatever you choose, I'll just be there to support you. And I'm like, that's not my guy. My guy's standing beside me. We're driving this together. And I didn't feel it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say something else about that though, because he came to the country, and you've obviously had other clients say this. He did come to the country and he walked out of that airport and I knew immediately. And you don't, you could ask me now, why? Well, I just knew.
Right. There's so many components that go into attraction, compatibility, having a want match, and there's so many variables. And it's interesting that you can have you and one person, and in between you is this dynamic, and then you switch out one person and the dynamic is like night and day from before.
Yes.
And that's the reason I want, you and my other clients to like really be present with what's happening.
And that is a massive thing that you taught me. And what I was realizing was when I was coming to the table with him, my person, me as a person, was not someone I was actually enjoying to be.
Yes. Yeah. Because you were, if I remember correctly, you were somewhat angry with him a lot of the time, wanting him to be someone else.
Yes, I was angry. I was frustrated. I was sick of listening to my own voice because I was bringing a lot to the relationship and he was more of in a support role. So I was bored and that made me frustrated. So when I saw the phone ring or it was time to call him, I got angry. I was out of alignment.
Yeah.
And that
you
just
didn't stop calling. You didn't
stronger.
Stop. Which was what was funny was you'd be like, I still picked up the phone.
And that's why I hired a coach.
That's awesome. But you did the thing. I mean, you knew you had to break up with him. It was hard. And you engaged in the discomfort of it. Do you wonder exactly how divorced women just like you are meeting eligible men who want a real relationship and a commitment? They're doing it by dating with their core values. Your core values are the GPS that lead you to the partner you've been looking for. When you use your core values on dating apps, text messages, and at social events, You will easily connect with your true match partner without chasing, settling, or wasting time with non-committal men. I have taught exactly how to do this in the 2-hour Core Values Dating Blueprint course available on my website, sadecurry.com/dating. That's SADECURRY.com/dating. You will learn exactly how to identify your core values and use them on your dating profile, how to ask the right questions via text, and how to tell the right stories on dates so that you attract the right people and repel those who aren't right for you. If you're ready to meet your true match, hop over to SadeCurry.com/dating or click the link in the show notes. Now back to the episode.
Yeah. So I'm still learning so much about, being uncomfortable and the fact that courage feels terrible, but that on the other side of courage is what we ultimately want.
Yeah.
So yes, it was excruciating in the moment, especially because I remember saying to you, but he's my best friend.
And then he had a loss in his family the very week. You were ready to go. You were like, okay, I'm going to tell him, I'm going to break up. And then he experienced a loss.
Exactly. And in these times, so the celebration of his father's his father was a really, really tough time. Yeah. It was really restricted, very highly emotional. Most of it was online. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was a tough week.
Yes. Yeah, but you didn't die.
I didn't die.
Here you are. Right. And so, after that, we opened up the space to really look at your past relationships. And we discovered that in a lot of your past relationships, you hadn't been yourself. Like the relationships had been all about the men and you making sure they were okay and you caring for them.
100%. And, this is something that, you're still coaching me on to this day. My nature, and I know the nature of a lot of women is to take on that role, right, of caring and nurturing. And I actually had done that as a profession for 20 years, being a therapist and welcoming people into my space and are you okay? And so it was very, very strong.
Yep. Yeah. But you recognized it because you were like, I don't even know who I was. Because we looked at how you showed up in those relationships. And, I think there was a conversation we had where I said, well, what did you want from him? And you were like, I didn't want anything.
Yeah. I didn't know anything other than that role. Literally. I didn't know who I was other than I'm going to take care of you, that person.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess chronologically you had one other relationship, but I want to touch on that point of knowing who you are, because as part of this work, you ended up really getting in touch with what you wanted for your life in a really powerful way.
Yes, I did. And that probably started with my surfing journey, to be honest. So I think I just started surfing before you and I started working together. A girlfriend of mine had been encouraging me for about a year, and we actually collectively held a retreat out in a beautiful little village here on the West Coast called Piha. And I was made to get into the water in a wetsuit with a surf coach because I was actually coaching 12 women on this retreat, and I thought I'd better, contribute and join in. And honestly, it was the most exhilarating experience because I wasn't cold. And I wasn't scared because we had a coach. And in the car park afterwards, I was like, woo! And that started my 6-month coaching journey in the surfing world, which really was the foundation of me understanding more about myself, because it took an enormous amount of courage to be on the West Coast here in New Zealand is super rough and wild and woolly all the time. So I was having to be outside of myself for that. And then I really came into my own, I guess, in a way, because I've come from a farming family, and being outdoors and in nature suddenly and in its entirety and with my son was the most magical experience. So my self-concept was hugely elevated in those months.
Right. Now, prior to starting surfing, were you in nature much? Did you make a lot of time to be in nature?
So I would go to the beach for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
But I wasn't in the water. I was terrified of the ocean.
And then the people you were dating were all, you called them suits.
Suits. That is correct. They were all indoors.
Right. Yeah. So there was this whole part of yourself that you hadn't discovered, that you hadn't given expression to. And the fact that you hadn't was making you choose guys that weren't a match.
Yeah. And I knew I felt a huge calling to be in nature and be outside more. But I really just didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to express myself, and I didn't have the confidence at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. And then throughout this period, you, I know we're skipping forward a little bit. Tell me about the day, because I know you came to this coaching call and you were like, I know exactly what I want to do with myself and the kind of life I want to live. And it had nothing to do with a guy.
Yeah, well, I think it started with your list, Sade. Of course it did.
Yes.
Dating intelligently.
The Irresistible You worksheet, the one about your vision and all the things about you. It's got a million questions.
Totally. So I started with the first 4, the things that I love, things that I would love to do before I died. 50 assets that I would bring to a relationship, or 50 things that were interesting about myself. And I just started there, and I went to town, and I saw all of these themes running through those 4 lists of wanting to be in my gumboots and wanting to be out, outside and in the bush and at the beach, and to create something in those places. So I've always had this dream to build my own house. Yeah. And so, those themes were really, really strong before you and I started the dating. Yeah.
And what was amazing about that day was such a breakthrough. Like, you hadn't met a guy. You had actually just broken up with another guy that we'll talk about in a minute. or wasn't quite a breakup. That was more of a fade to black situation.
Sure was.
Yeah, but you were glowing and you were so happy and inspired.
By me.
By yourself. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I was connected to what it was that was my essence and what it was that I wanted to be doing, for sure. I was 100% like, it was a huge revelation for me.
Yeah, this is the work right here. Like, literally, when a client has that moment, I'm like, yep, the guy's like around the corner. I always know, because the minute you have that freedom and exhilaration and you love your life, you know exactly where you're going, and you have that certainty and inspiration, like, how are you not going to meet your partner?
100%. And I've seen this in my own coaching practice time and time again since I learned it from you. And I know exactly when my client's about to meet someone, because they're in that incredible space and the energy is super high and they are good. Yes,
so good. Okay, but before we go forward to when you met the guy, because everyone's going to start weeping when we talk about him.
Oh, I can't wait.
But we first started working, you immediately broke up with that relationship that you came into the coaching program with, and then you met someone else. And I forget how you met him. You were introduced, I believe.
Yes. So a mutual friend of ours had been mentioning him on and off when he knew I wasn't seeing someone, prior. And I just hadn't pursued it. And because I was working with you and dating like a CEO, I contacted him and said, right, it might be time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were locked down quite severely at that point. So I started a text relationship with this person, which after a Zoom relationship prior didn't seem that unusual.
To be fair to you, it was in lockdown, so you didn't have a lot of options,
No.
at least not at first.
No. And it was intense. It was, multiple long, even sometimes debating texts, over about a 5-week period. And I became really invested, didn't I, Sade?
You were very invested. But what was interesting about it was, and this is so good for everyone to know, is that the dating container, the dating situation, the relationship dynamic is such a great learning tool for learning about yourself, right? Because even through those text conversations, you immediately realize that I'm showing up in a certain way that I don't like.
Sure did. Yes. And of course, when you were coaching me, I realized that I wasn't bringing half of me to the table, not even half. You would say, when you were together for those 6 hours, because eventually we did have some in-person meets, how much of you did you bring to that 6 hours? And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I think I just looked up at him and listened to every word that he said with, my mouth half open, like in awe of this person. And actually I'd walked away after 6 hours and he really knew nothing more about me.
Yes. Yeah. Like, and I remember you had said, well, I felt a little intimidated. Like he had done so much more and he had, done all this. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. And he was so intellectual. And I remember you asking me, what does intellectual actually mean?
Yep, we question everything.
Always with the good question, Sade. I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, maybe, okay, I can see your point here, Sade. What does that actually mean?
Makes a story. It says, oh, he's intellectual. And what you don't realize is the other side of that story of what your brain is telling you is that, well, you're not good enough. You're not intellectual enough.
And I certainly felt like that for sure. Yes. And, I guess the biggest thing was I wasn't bringing myself and he wasn't bringing himself really to the table either. And you really pushed me in that department in a way I would never have pushed myself. So you actually got me asking, hey, how about a meetup? After these 5 weeks of long texting, how about we meet up? And we did. And then when I went to suggest it again, he backed away. And so I asked again, which I never would have done. And the great thing about that was I knew prior to working with you, I would have let that, roll out for many weeks and months, just nurturing, mollycoddling the situation. And you really just pushed me into, we want to know. We want to know now.
Right. And he had a situation in his family where there was a family member who was sick. Yes. And you were holding on to that.
You were like, are you going to take him cookies? Are you going to make him some dinners?
He has this family member who's sick and maybe it's because of that. I was like, is he? Well, he's going to work, right? He's working his job and getting paid. So I don't know. I think he has time to date if he wants to.
I think he has time to send a message.
Right.
Yes, probably. You're right, Sade. Is he coming home at the end of the day and making himself dinner? Yes, he has time to actually message you.
Yes. And you're not the only one. A lot of my clients have that where they will it's just another way for the brain to create a story. Right? We're very conflict averse in general. Our brains don't like conflict. We don't like to end the relationship or see the cracks in the relationship, which is one of the reasons, relationships get into a mess. And so our brain will create a story so it doesn't have to see the cracks.
Yeah. You were gentle though. I remember the first time he was offline and you were like, we're going to treat that as a pink flag. Okay. We're going to put that over here and we're just going to keep reassessing. But if that keeps coming back, that will be our red flag. And of course, that's exactly what happened.
Yes. Yes. I like to, and of course, it differs from client to client, like what the situation is. There's no formulas. In this case, I had a sense that this is what it was because, okay, so I don't want to, every time I say something, I'm like, you have thousands of listeners listening and someone's going to say take what you said and apply it to a different relationship. But sometimes we don't have to make that decision immediately, right? Especially if you have your awareness turned on and you're like, I'm watching and I'm noting it, right? A lot of what we've done is like we slowed everything down and asked questions about everything without telling the guy, without telling him that we were looking at all of these things. It was just let him be him. And then you just see what's happening and then you make your decision when you're ready. So it's not that you have to cut the person off at the first sign of his, pulling back. You can just be like, oh, this is interesting, right? Let me see where this goes. Let me push on that a little bit and see if this is real or not, right? Get to the truth of what's happening.
Yeah, that was really helpful for me and probably admittedly appealed to my slow processing nature and nurturing nature, but we still got to the truth and in a much more succinct way, for sure.
Yeah, he was not up for it. So that's okay because what happened next? Oh, well, what happened next was getting on the apps. That was interesting.
Yeah. So let's just finish that story off by saying that actually threw me around a little bit, being rejected again, at 42. And I felt I was very invested in that. And I remember coming to the call and saying, I'm not ready to date again, Sade. And you're like, yes, we are.
Right. Yeah. I think I gave you a week.
You did give me a week.
I gave you a week. I was like, you can cry about it for a week.
And you know what? You gave me the grace of a week. And that was enough space in my brain to be 4 days later on the app. I was like, okay, great. I've got the space. No one's telling me what to do. Don't like being told what to do. So I'll do it in my own time. And I was able to do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my app experience, Bumble, seriously. So I'd never done any online dating whatsoever. In fact, I never intended to. And you had said to me, you actually meet a lot of men organically, don't you?
Yes.
And I really took that on board and knew and felt that for myself and then found evidence to support that too. So I was meeting people. But it was time to experiment with this online dating. And I have to say that it was an excellent experience.
Yeah. Well, I still want to pause on how much resistance you had, though.
Okay, let's go.
Surprisingly, you were just like, I don't know about the apps. You had so many thoughts about it, right? Because you had the heartbreak, right? You had that heartbreak and it really threw you for a loop. You had a lot of thoughts and a lot of emotions and your brain was really spinning with that. But when you were ready, you were also like, I just don't want, you didn't want to. And I, if I remember correctly, it was just the volume of people.
Yeah. And also I think being a manual therapist for 20 years, my idea of seeing the way someone walked and talked and held themselves and smelled, I just thought, how am I ever going to collect the information that I need with these pixels on the screen? It was just so against the person that I am. Yeah. For sure.
And then you got on and it was like magic.
It was an experience. I mean, I was, what it's like, I don't know, you're first on, you're new to the scene and everybody jumps. And I thought, oh my goodness, I need to put on every filter known to man. And I thought, I actually had a process worked out in my mind. I thought I was going to let the first 10 in, actually evaluate the first 10, have some conversations, get rid of the ones I wasn't, interested in, and then let the second lot in. And I never got past that first lot because it sounds terrible the way I'm talking about them, but I met 6 really great guys, and I ended up talking quite a lot over a 2-week period to 4 of them.
Yeah. In your first batch of 10.
Yes, in the first batch of 10.
So good.
And I actually ended up finding out I knew 2 of those through friends of mine. So they were completely legit. And I was really enjoying the conversation. I was really enjoying the experience of meeting new people.
Yeah. And so that 2-week period was like, so you were on the app for about like 2 weeks at the same time that you were sort of filtering these 10 guys down to 2. You also did the in-person thing, which is what we talk about, letting people know that you're open, like literally asking for blind dates.
So this was the most significant part of your coaching in the dating phase. Was you said to me, it's time to tell your friends that you are looking for your person, and that if they thought there was someone in their life that was worth me introducing them to, or them introducing me to, then please, can we make that happen? And I kid you not, one of my closest girlfriends of more than 15 years put her hand up. And I thought to myself, have you not been watching this train smash for the last 10 years?
It's incredible how that happens. You have to open the portal. Like, this is your best friend or one of your best friends. And like, she has a guy in her back pocket.
She needed permission. And that's what you said. People need permission, because I was good with my life. I was surfing every other day. My business is strong. I have my son. I have all my girlfriends. On the outside, I wasn't looking for anything, but I really actually was looking for a deep love in my life. And so she put her hand up, and I was a little bit like, and she just said, look, I just want you to meet this person. He's a really good person. Please just meet him.
Yeah. And I enjoy telling this part of the story, which is she asked you and you said, yes, I want to meet this guy. She asked, the guy, he said, yes, I want to meet her. And then was like, I don't know how to like put the 2 of you together. I was like, what's happening? Because you came back on the coaching call and you were like, well, she doesn't know how to give him my number and how to like the words. And so we literally sat there on the coaching call and constructed the text that she was going to
saying,
use.
We'll just meet up. Like, we'll just come across one another in one of these small villages. That'll happen. And 2 weeks went by and I was like, I don't think that's going to happen.
No, it doesn't happen that way. We have to make, like, we do, you have to like, this is.
So I said, okay, Luce, I give you permission to give him my number. And within half a day, he had phoned. Yeah, he did not muck around.
Yes.
His words to her were, she looks beautiful and kind, but I'm only interested in good people. And my girlfriend had said to him, well, she's definitely that.
Yes.
So that night he called.
And you are good people. So he called, you guys talked.
Yeah, we talked for a couple of hours on that first night, and a day went by and we were on our first date the following day.
Yeah.
And
what was the date? Tell us about the date, because it was really cool.
I have to tell you about the date. It was incredible. Best date ever. So we met for a walk, but the walk was, scaling mountains and cliff tops, climbing cliff tops, and walking through the bush and jumping into the ocean. It was my absolute dream date with a cup of tea at the end.
Yes, which is exactly the life you had described when you had done your personal vision work.
Exactly the life I had described, for sure. Yeah. Now, one of the things you taught me, and I'll never forget this, you were constantly teaching me about assessing how I was feeling at every step of the way. And I'll never forget being in the presence of this person and within 5 minutes having that assessment, like sitting with myself for a moment and feeling completely myself. And that was the first time in my entire life that I had felt that feeling of home.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. Like just being able to be in touch with what's going on inside of you is such a powerful skill. Like being at home inside your own skin, being able to be with you, be with yourself while things are happening that are amazing or whatever on the outside. I think that's what life is about, right? That's why we're here, to be connected with ourselves, to know ourselves, to be our biggest champion, our biggest advocate, have self-trust and self-knowledge.
I think that's why I hired you. Yeah. I was just so out of touch with who that was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad we'd done that work prior to meeting this person. You know, was I the same person with him around? And the answer was yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And we didn't even have to do the work, like with the couple of prior relationships we had to do. Well, okay, there was once I said, hey, just gather some stories about yourself and prepare to share yourself. You didn't have to do that with him.
No, I didn't. And the other part to that I remember you and I talking about was, unless I bring all of me to the table, then he can't necessarily bring all of him. And we're not actually choosing the most authentic version of ourselves.
Yes. Like he might be choosing someone that you're not. And this is why down the road, then the relationship looks different, because it's like, oh, well, this is a different person than the person I started out with.
Yeah. And that resentment builds. And that's a really tough thing to work through, as I know, as a relationship coach.
Yeah. All right. So then we had a little mini heartbreak after this.
I wondered if you were going to mention it. And I love this part of the story. I love this part of the story because we went on this incredible 4-hour bush extravaganza. And I remember ringing my girlfriend and I was like, OMG, right. Okay. I was still trying to play it a little bit cool at that point.
Slightly cool.
But I was like, you did good, girl. You did good.
Yeah.
And then a few days later, I got a message saying, look, I'm sorry, Melissa, but I have actually, after 18 months of not meeting anyone, met 2 incredible women within a couple of days of each other. So I'm sorry, but I hope we do have a walk again someday. So I was gutted, actually. And I remember sending a message saying, I'm really sad about that, but I'm so happy for you because I think you're an incredible person. And, he was what you would call contracted in. So I knew that it was possible we would see each other again. So I did want to leave it on a good note. So I was gutted for a day. And I remember waking up on the Monday morning and I was filled with hope because I had remembered that I had felt that incredible feeling and knowing of home. And I thought, right, I'm going out to find it again.
Yes. So good. Because and what I love about it is that you didn't think that he created that for you, right? No. You were like, he's a person that I can experience this with, but this is an experience that I created. And you knew you could create it again.
100%. And that's when I, let myself welcome in that Bumble experience in that way. I was like, well, it's just a matter of time before I feel that feeling again. I know what it is. I've felt it and I'm finding it.
Yeah, so good. And that is the cure for feeling desperate, feeling attached, feeling graspy, the excessive levels of heartbreak pain that we experience with someone we've just met, which happens a lot. That's the cure for it, is understanding that you create these results, that you are in control of this journey. That's like my life mission, is to let women know and teach them that, you're in control. So many times, like we feel like it's not in our control. Well, I don't control the men out there. I don't control if someone chooses me. I don't control what's on the apps, but you really do control. You just have to learn to see your own power and your own ability and your own capacity to create it.
I love that. And it was too, Sade, it was too magical and too natural to ignore that. I felt it, I knew it, and I was not going to give up on that. I was like, right, I'm going back out there to find it, as in find someone to be with that, because that was the best feeling in the world.
Yes. And once you experience it, and I noticed that with my clients, is once they experience a healthy relationship at some level, the next experience is better. And nobody that, ever goes back to worse to, like you sometimes have to date a few people, but I do notice that progression as the healing takes place and the growth takes place. There's a progression in how the guys get better and better and better.
That's so true. And I can relate that to business, right? Once we get to a certain growth in our business, we never, ever go back, and we can always guarantee that's our baseline for the next year.
Yes.
It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
I love that.
All right. I'll let you tell us what happened next.
So I'd received that message on a Sunday morning at 6 a.m. So he was obviously, sweating on that decision. And he had actually at the time said, after I'd said, I was disappointed or sad about that, he'd said, I just can't walk and talk with two women at the same time. So honorable man. Little did he know that I was on Bumble talking with a few different men, because that's how
we do it. We keep all the portals open.
Yeah, we do. And it's a great way to filter people, and, not dating per se, but having conversations with, 3 to 5 people at the same time. That was super helpful, because it really is a wonderful filtering process.
Yes.
And the osmosis absolutely works. Whatever's good floats to the top.
That's right.
So a week later, to the hour, 6 o'clock on the Sunday morning, he's been agonizing over it. He sent me a message saying, "Hi, Melissa. I totally understand if you are not open to this, but I would love for you to come and have a cup of tea with me." So he sent a little olive branch. And, for a split second, I thought my ego could get in the way here, because, he chose someone else for a week, or he chose to talk to someone else for a week.
Yeah.
But I didn't, and said, I'd love that. And that was actually at that time a week before Christmas. And in New Zealand, our community here, we shut down for a month at Christmas. So everybody's very busy trying to tie up loose ends and get jobs finished and things. So I said to him that I was happy to meet again after Christmas, but he was not going to take that as the answer, for sure. So we actually had a mutual party coming up before Christmas, and he said, well, I'd love to do that also, but I would like to spend some time with you. Yeah. So we went on a second walking date, which was equally as magical. And he'd actually been up 2 hours prior. So 6 o'clock in the morning, he'd got up and delivered some sparkling water to the destination, because we sat down on this beautiful love seat at the top of a mountain, and he just discreetly reached behind him and pulled up some sparkling water.
He did the walk. He did the walk twice to have water waiting for you. Wow.
So that was pretty magical. So that was a week later.
You've been together since December. So what's this now like?
Yeah, well, we woke
2
up.
Months.
Yeah, we had half of Christmas Day together, which was really magical, and we kept looking across at one another and saying, but this is crazy to be with each other on Christmas Day. It was
and the
really
beauty
special.
of that moment, because I've experienced it when I met my husband, is that you're still so close to the time when you didn't have someone. So it's like stepping out of this closed, dark bubble into the light. And you're still like, wait, how am I here? Is this a dream? Is this real? Because last week I hadn't met this person.
Yeah, that's so true. And we just happen to have this incredible opportunity where both of both sets of children were with their respective parents for an 8-day period. And we were able to just, look at each other and walk every day and talk. And it was just this wonderful opportunity that neither of us had planned anything directly after Christmas. And that was everything.
And what's so amazing and wonderful about this is that you're so compatible. Like when you talked about nature and you talked about like kind of like the life you want to live, like the ideas, you both run businesses, like your lifestyles are so compatible. And I think a lot of times, high achieving women or women who are successful or, women who have this expansive vision for their lives feel like there's no one out there who would match this.
Absolutely. And I felt, perhaps the last few relationships definitely fell into that camp where I had a pretty strong vision for what my future looked like, and I'm super ambitious, and they weren't driven in that department at all. Yeah. So meeting someone who had been successful in business in their own right, very successful, and was, mostly living the life that I had dreamed of for myself, in the bush, at the beach, wanting to build again, like I'm wanting to build again, super fit and healthy and plant-based. And,
yes. Oh my God.
Living in the ocean.
The fit and healthy part. So listeners, I want you to hear the hazards of being a dating coach, because Melissa started sending me pictures of her and her boyfriend, who happens to have 6-pack abs and a tan and a scruffy beard. All the things.
You saying to me, I don't think you're allowed to send these to me. And I said to you, oh no, you're my dating coach. You get to see everything.
Like, I don't know how my husband's going to feel about these photos coming into my DMs.
Luckily, he was partially clothed. And then I had to say, look, okay. I said, look, Sade, he's never got any clothes on. Don't worry. He greets everyone at the house like this. So you're okay.
But really, it's like, you got the guy that everyone says doesn't exist. You literally met this guy and are in a relationship with him.
I remember you saying, oh no, when you come on the podcast, those women are just going to throw their phones down. They're not going to want to hear this.
Like, wait, he's rich. He has a 6-pack abs, has a gorgeous house, walks in nature, goes, like what?
He's semi-retired. He's got all the time in the world for loving his family.
Yeah.
He's very caring, very good dad, very loving person, always supporting people in the community, a volunteer firefighter, helping everyone. He's an incredible person.
Yeah, he is. I mean, and we've gone through because we're at that stage in your work where a lot of times people are like, oh, I just met the guy and now I'm off. And I'm like, oh, no, we still have like the last third of the work to do, which is nurturing the commitment. Because if you haven't been in a healthy relationship, you don't know how to be in a healthy relationship. You might think you do. You might think, oh, it's just once I'm in it and it's great. But then there's that last part of practicing skills that you didn't use in your earlier relationships because you weren't in a healthy relationship in those. And we're doing some of that work, which your kryptonite, once again, is being extremely nurturing, a little bit of a people pleaser, wanting to take care of others.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the healthiest energy all the time.
No, 100%. And I absolutely was that person. Oh, well, I've met the guy. I'm good, Sade. You're my dating coach. I'm no longer dating. I think I'm good. I'm great.
That's right.
Yes. And absolutely there is, plenty more work to do. And especially like you mentioned in this wanting to take care of, wanting to nurture, wanting to love, wanting to be there for him in all the ways that he needs, and forgetting perhaps, the the fiery feminine, all of that energy that the person that I am, and wanting to bring that equally to the relationship for sure.
Yeah.
So
I'm not
very
over
much
indexing on, like, because if you over index on your nurturing nature, then you become a mother in the relationship.
And nobody wants to date their mom.
Nobody wants to date their mom. No, it's not sexy.
No, so there's a huge risk of me falling into that long term. And I'm so glad I'm under your care at the moment, because, that is absolutely my natural way to do that. And I don't want to forget. And also I don't want our relationship to be about all the things that we need to take care of.
Yes.
I want the energy to be high sometimes with the fun and the excitement of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are still negotiating, largely on his part, the loose ends from his previous relationship. So I want to be very conscious that our relationship is not about that.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we compartmentalize that? How do we want to talk about that? Like you suggested asking on our last coaching call, how do we want to fit that in? Because that is not who we are.
Right. It's really just letting each person, it's literally just letting each of you own your life. Like, you own your life, he owns his life, and then you have this thing that you're creating in between the both of you.
Yeah. And this is exactly the work that I do with my own clients. You do you and I'll do me, and we'll meet in the middle to have fun. Yes. It's the biggest thing, because desire requires that space and that energy.
Yes. It's the best. Like, you're in the fun part of the work now. There's still work to be done, but you're in the fun part. This is the, like, okay, we just need to tweak this a little bit. Also, I think we're doing a lot of work on having the conversations that need to be had. Because sometimes there's a tendency to just be in the romance and not have the conversations.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful for your coaching on that. Even just this last week, 4 of the 6 things that you and I talked about, we've already spoken about. And the conversation is easy with him, and that's fantastic. Yes. But being aware of that at this point was really helpful.
Yeah. So good. I'm so happy for you. Like, I kept going to him. I'm like, oh my God. Look, I would show him this. And, and I do that with all of my clients. When they meet someone, I'm like over the moon. I'm over the moon about their progress. I have another client this week who recently met a widower, and, it's similar story. Like, they're in the place of like starting to negotiate the beginnings of going exclusive with each other. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is so good.
Look, I tell you, the decision to come and work with you, and I had, like my business coach on the go, and I had lots of other commitments. The decision to come and work with you was absolutely the best decision I've made in years. Like, it was profound. It has been life-changing. It has been soul-searching. It has been abrupt. It has been smack you around the face and make you wake up. And it has been the most valuable thing.
Yes, it's that investment. Sometimes people ask, and I know you do your calls, your consultation calls, and you try to show your clients like what it's worth for them to have everything that they want. And I've talked to women who are like, well, other people don't need coaches to find their partner. Like, I feel like a loser for being the one of my friends who has to do this.
This is my argument, right? Why would you want to take more energy, more time, more money to find, if you find it on your own? I mean, I got to the point where 12 years down the track, I was like, I need a new skill set. This ain't working.
This is not working. Yeah, because those 12 years, all the energy in the relationships that are not working, that was costing you money. That was costing you time. That was costing you space. It was costing you, I don't know, all the things that you could have been doing if you didn't have that. And then the other part of it that I tell people about is like, I'm like, when you meet your person, then you're done. Like, it's done. I was like, we see a lot of horror stories around dating on the internet, because the people who have the good stories, they're done and they just move on and go and enjoy their relationships. They're not on the internet telling their stories.
That's right. And I remember you saying very recently, wow, great. You've got all this time and energy for all the other things in your life. And it really hit home when you sent me that message. I was like, yes, I do. I'm not, fraught and heartbroken and searching and wondering anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is done with.
Yeah, 100%. And sometimes, and I'll tell people like, listen, if you could purchase this gift, if you could go to the shop, it's going to cost you a few $1,000s, but you could buy this today. Would you do it? Like, yeah, we all would. I would. If I knew my husband was guaranteed and everything, I would have paid $20,000 more, actually. Now that I think of it, now that I know him and I'm with him, I'm like, oh my God, it's worth any price. It's worth any price to have an amazing relationship.
For sure. Best investment ever.
Is there anything else you would like to tell the listeners? I mean, we've gotten to the story. I know we talked about so many things. I wanted to talk about the moment where you were like, oh, when your friend told you that he was rich. And you were like, ew, I don't want that.
Even the word rich, I was like, oh no. I found out what his business was, and I recognized the business, and I was like, oh no. I'm actually in the process of simplifying and living as small as possible. I don't want to be in that scene. I don't want to have to entertain people and
it's hilarious what the brain wants.
Host parties
for other rich people.
And then I found out that he'd lived in a caravan for a year, and I was like, oh, now we're talking.
The brain, and I tell this to my clients all the time. I'm like, listen, your brain loves certainty. It wants to know. It wants to be sure. So when it hears something, it just thinks it knows. Your brain thought it knew all about him because of his net worth. Versus, no, he's also the guy who will live in one room and go on the road trip and will walk in the mud and all of that.
Oh, he was all of that and then some. And actually, we've since had many a conversation where he has said, the life that I had been living was not at all a reflection of the person that I am or how I want to live, which is exactly where I had got to at the end of my marriage. This doesn't represent who I am.
Yes.
So now we get to create this life together, and we're both in successful businesses, which is great. So we will have the means, but it will be done our way, very much pared back, very simplified, without all the trimmings, and being in nature. We get to create that together, which is so exciting.
You're such a good match. I mean, you have your successful business. He has his. I mean, it's really, really beautiful to see. Really beautiful to see.
Thank you.
All right. I know we went way over on this podcast, but it was so, so worth it. What does commitment look like for you and for your new partner? Have you guys had that conversation?
Right now, a couple of months in, it looks like building a home together at the beach in the bush. That's our commitment.
Wow.
Right now.
You just keep topping it. Like you just keep topping it. Who doesn't want to build a home with their partner on the beach? That's so beautiful. Melissa, thank you for sharing your story and your inspiration and your journey with the podcast listeners. I know you're going to give so many women hope that, the high standard that they have for themselves, there is a partner out there for them who will also rise to meet that high standard for them. And if you wanted to give one piece of advice to the listeners, what would it be?
Ooh, one piece of advice. I think that ability to listen to how you feel was instrumental. That's so good. So good. Well, congratulations. Please tell everyone where they can find you on the internet if they want to contact you, if anyone wants to talk to you about their relationship or refer you to, other couples or singles who are looking for work in their relationships. Please tell us where we can find you on social media and on the internet. Yeah, so I am melissajanecameron.com. So Melissa Cameron on Facebook, and melissa.jane_loves is my Instagram handle. And I work with singles and couples separately. So I work with everyone separately to help them get back to love and make a decision to stay and go. So I would welcome anyone who wants to work in this department. I love my job, and I very much love all the babes, men and women, that I work with every day. And I'm so, so grateful to be able to do this work and help people on their love journey too.
Yes, please follow Melissa. She has the best posts about love because she's such a lover and so nurturing. So even if it's just for her posts, follow her on social media so you can enjoy just that little drop of love in your life every day. Melissa, thank you for being on the podcast. I appreciate you so much. I look forward to continuing our work together. And for everyone listening, thank you for your time and attention. And I will see you next time. Thanks for listening today. If you are ready to get married after divorce, I want to invite you to download my free 8-video training specifically designed to help divorced women date with ease and get married again. Head over to sadecurry.com to get started. That's SADECURRY.com. I'll see you inside.